All good? So no questions there? All right, so then we'll jump down to, and I believe that's why Scott's in the audience, the finance agreement for construction and engineering for Watermain on Maynard Avenue from North Veterans Memorial Drive to O'Brien Road.
Jump right in. Press the button.
I always forget the button when I'm in the planning commission too. Back in March, we passed a finance agreement with the city of Grand Rapids for $1.4 million for the Maynard Phase 2 and Phase 3 project. Unfortunately, the paperwork for that got lost at Grand Rapids and was never finally approved. And we discovered that about 2 months ago when we sent some bills down there, and they started to kind of circle around and say, where's the money sitting for this? So they've kind of rapidly got back together with us, put together a new agreement, and we got together with Fishbeck and said, let's double check our numbers because Grand Rapids has added quite a few items to the project. Most notably, there's two big pressure reducing chambers that we have to add to this project that we didn't know about at the beginning. And those things can be very, very expensive. We've also had to add a few, several hundred feet at least of water main in O'Brien to make our final connection. So the project, as many projects do, has creeped up a little bit. So essentially what we've done is we've adjusted that number from 1,400, from 1.4 million to 1.75 million to account for those extras. And I think there's probably a little bit of inflation in there as well, because this is something that we scoped out several years ago. So with that, the agreement is exactly the same. All that we see that's changed is the total amount. And the project's actually going quite well. We're about ready to put it out for bids. The plans are about 90% done. So we're kind of in a final staff review for the construction drawings. So everything's going well. It's just a matter of getting the finance agreement approved through Grand Rapids and then reaffirmed essentially here.
And I think, Scott, before turn over to the commissioners for any questions they have, make sure we all understand this. The cost increase would have been there anyway because we had several hundred feet that we added onto this, two pressures. So to me, we would have been at this number anyway eventually. Yeah,
it's pretty standard operating procedures with these system finance jobs because you plan something out and then you pass it down to all the specialists in the different divisions of the water department. And they talk about the different pressure zones and where the valves have to be and things like that. And it gets a little bit more scrutinized, and that's where we ended up having to come up with essentially two valves, which creates 3 independent pressure districts across a little more than a mile of water main. But there's a big elevation change through there, and what they want to do is they want to make sure that everybody's water pressure is roughly the same. They don't want to have one person with 100 pounds per square inch of pressure and another person with 40. They want to make sure that everybody's kind of in that 60 range. And so what they do then is they have these valves to reduce the pressure and bleed off some of the excess pressure as you get lower, and your pressure would be higher.
Commissioners, any questions?
Sure.
So,
I guess when I look at this and I think who, what, and why, and I look at the North Ridge and the tower and the water and sewer we put up there. That's a development going in, and that North Ridge is supporting that cost, or that they're going to be part of the payback. So who's going to be? How many people are we going to have hook up to this, and why are we doing it? I thought once we got the loop done down there, we could. It seems to be that we started a water main project and we're going to do it every year. And to me, the only people I see supporting that are those of us that are already got sewer and water, because when you put a mile of water main in, that's a big expense, but I don't see too many people. Who's going to pay for all this? Other than me out of my water rates going up.
Yeah, the entire Walker system will absorb this debt, and then it'll be spread out and distributed among all those that have water.
Right, and every year we do this. We've been doing this and looping this. What is the need, or why is the desire to put that water main there in the first place?
Well, this was a commitment that we made 5 years ago when we built the first section of water main in Maynard. And the state said, we'll allow you to put this one small piece in, but only if you make that looped within 5 years.
Didn't we loop last year?
No, it's not looped. This is the final year for us making that loop. And rather than do it every couple of years, small pieces, We're doing phase 2 and phase 3 together so that there's an economy of scale, and we've kind of pushed it off as far as we can. We're in the last year now to make that connection and fulfill our commitment.
So that water main we put in Maynard, is there somebody, if we got that much, I guess, to me, I guess looking backwards instead of looking forward, I mean, should we have even went there in the first place? Why do we need that? I don't understand, you know. We're talking millions of dollars here. We're just adding it on to everybody's water bill, and the whole system's going to pay for it, but yet, how many customers are we generating?
Yeah, I think my answers are going to be about 5 years late because we certainly had those debates back when the first phase went in. I think that was a little bit controversial. I know you had some questions then, but we went ahead and did it. I think at this point, you know, we could cancel the project or postpone it and then try to do some negotiations with the state. But when you come down to water quality and the DEQ, I don't know how much room we're going to have, how much wiggle room with them right now with the scrutiny that they're under, especially when you take into consideration the quality of the wells in the south part of the city. So there's some great benefits to this because it makes water available to a lot of neighborhoods that don't have it available now. And every one of those incremental increases gets it closer and closer to neighborhoods like Serenity Ridge. And I think in this case, there's 2 potential neighborhoods right at the corner of Butterworth and Maynard that are, right now, they're mine sites that are going to be residential property at some point. And it's kind of nice to know that they're going to go in with public water versus going in with wells, because if they go in with wells, they're most likely going to stay with wells. It's hard to retrofit a neighborhood like that to come back and then pay for the water later. But you know, those are things that we talked about quite a ways back. You know, I think if you wanted to have that kind of discussion about, you know, stepping back from the project, it's probably more of a commission discussion than a staff discussion, I guess, at this point.
So you're talking about some properties. Do we have anything, so if somebody wants to develop, build 20 houses or a dead-end street or whatever, that would say, we got water main, you're going to use our water main, you're not going to put in a well? Can we do that? Or?
Yes.
So, I mean, you know, I see this over and over and over. We just keep, you know, pretty soon the water rates are going to be out, you know, out of the ballpark because, you know, the same people are paying the bills. And have we got 3 people who are going to hook up to this or anybody?
From what I've been told, there's quite a few people along Maynard that are interested, but certainly not 1.75 million worth of people, because it's a very sparsely populated area. But I think the folks that are down there generally were, some of them at least, were enthusiastic about the idea that water is going to be there. The people that live a little bit farther away seem to be the ones that are more excited, but they've got some work to do too, because if they want to get this extended to their neighborhoods, they need to petition for it, get a special assessment district put together, and there's some work to do there.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, anything else?
Yeah, if I may. Just to follow up on Commissioner Kent, do you have an estimate of what the rate raise will be for current users?
I do not. We could probably get that. It's going to be obviously a little bit more than it was before. Daryl, was it 0.5% per million was the number we used to use?
Yeah, I just know rates for this year have gone up 2.5% for sewer and water combined generally for 2019.
As the standard increase for the...
Yeah, well, it's based upon all the numbers. They do the
Right.
whole rate study depending on what the improvements are and what the bonds costs are these. And obviously there's the ability, because these projects are bonded with a lot of other projects at Grand Rapids at the same time. So we get some cost savings as a result of that because there's so much improvements going on through the system, so that helps us in the long run. And then they also have some rate smoothing abilities through the utility advisory board that they apply if possible. But it's probably about maybe 0.25%, 0.5% if we had to put a number to it. So you're probably talking 50 cents to $1 maybe.
Yeah, I'd be guessing in the 1%
Or a quarter.
range. But we do have the ability to get some of that back through frontage charges. So, for example, one house gets hooked up, they would pay 90, 100, 125 feet of frontage at roughly $80 a foot back to the system. That's not a lot for just one homeowner, But when it comes in and it's a large undeveloped piece of property, like one of those mining sites, they pay for that frontage, and it's quite a bit of assistance for the system. So there's some benefit there. But, we'd be silly to say we're going to get it all back. We'll absorb a lot of it as a system. The system will be more redundant, stronger, and safer for it.
Right, and so just to clarify, what I heard you say was it would be 50 cents to $1 per quarter, roughly?
Yeah, that's what I would think. I think when Scott was the formula that, for every $1 million, there's kind of like that much of an increase on your rates, your quarterly rates,
Okay.
depending on which community you are. 'Cause
Sure.
there's different,
And it'll change year to year.
it changes every year, depending on what kind of maintenance they have to do to the overall system that everybody shares with, and then those improvements that are just Walker related, so.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, Commissioners, anything else? No questions? Okay, anything else we'll need from Scott then for this? All right.
Okay?
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Daryl, would you mind walking us through the grant agreement with the MIDC and the City of Walker?
Oh, I would love to. Melanie's probably like, oh. So back in May of the Public Acts 214 of 2018, and then in 2017, the state adopted what's called the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission, and it basically requires all communities to provide indigent defense when they go to a court. So there was a whole set of standards, 4 standards that were adopted at that time that we had to comply with. So part of your packet includes that plan that we had to adopt and submit, or we submitted back last year to the state, and we received approval for that plan of how we're going to implement that with our court. And let me say, we've been working with all the other courts in Kent County, and Kent County has taken the lead on this, so we're all consistent in how we're going to administer this, which has been a great help for the county to take hold of that. But we still had to do our own specific financing plan, is what you have in here. So as part of that implementation at the MIDC at the state level, once we have an approved plan, the state was required to fund that plan for us to implement that, other than the local cost we would have already had, which is about a $6,000 cost if you saw that plan in there. The rest is a grant that we will receive based upon that plan. So we adopted the plan last year, got approval last year from the state. This is for the grant to get reimbursed or give us the funding to implement those first 4 steps of the plan. And working with the county and others in the area to provide the education and the requirements that are in those 4 steps. So this basically gives us the okay. This contract was really worked through the county and then approved with the state. So kind of the model contract that all the communities are adopting the same format. So really it's a formality. We'll set up separate accounts, and we have to account for how we're spending this money to provide the indigent defense at the city through the courts. So I wish I could give you more info, but that's about all I know on that. Dan DeVries has been working closely with the courts and the court officers in the communities. So we think we have a good handle on it. One of the issues we're talking about now are the reporting mechanisms. We have certain reporting guidelines, and all the communities are still deciding on what's the best way to do that. If we need to hire staff, if we can contract staff to do that amongst the communities, because we're just not sure what kind of a load this will place on our courts. And it can't be a court staff person that does it. The MIDC says it has to be somebody separate from the court that has to do this, but they have to know what goes on in the court. So it's quite confusing, but this grant, basically, this action today basically gets us the money from the state to reimburse us for our costs. So I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
The cost for the legal services, or the cost for all the hurdles you just got?
All of the above. The legal services are included as part of this, and the interviewing they have to do, and then we actually have to do part of the plan is to do some minor improvements over at the court, so we have to build a separate interviewing room in the lobby there that has to be separate, so there's allocated, I think, $20,000 to do that, so we're in the midst of creating a kind of a temporary office space there that will comply with the plan, so that's on track once we get the money. So they'll disperse this 50% up front, and then the second quarters subsequently.
Questions, Commissioner? All right, we are good there. We have about 4.5 minutes, it appears, for the, before we start the 7 o'clock. Frank, is there anything on the subplan 1A that, from a high level, want to use some time here for?
Sure. I think everyone was here, well, Carol probably not, when we started this subplan 1A process about a year ago. It's the northwest corner of the city, and we kind of whittled that down to the area between 4 Mile and 96, Fruit Ridge, Peach Ridge. And so Steve and the Planning Commission and the rest of the City Commission have reviewed a plan as it's kind of come together, future land use plan for that area. So where we're at tonight is really the last step in the approval process. Planning Commission's already granted a recommendation for approval. They did that unanimously on February 6th. So Steve can help us out with that, the background on there. We did not receive any public comments during the 63-day waiting period, and that waiting period is to allow a whole list of adjacent communities and utility companies to provide comment. We received none. At the public hearing, we did have one gentleman, Mr. Gauswer, talk about 4 Mile Road, and I think we discussed that and the plan for 4 Mile Road, et cetera. And I think we reached a logical conclusion there that the 4 Mile plan has been implemented by the Road Commission. So now we're at the level at that meeting of, okay, are we ready to approve this subplan and make a recommendation to the City Commission? So on February 6th, the Planning Commission did. So your role tonight as a City Commission is, because in 2015, the City Commission asserted the right to put the final stamp of approval on any master plan updates, of which this is one. It's only for a certain part of the city, but it's still a master plan update. So I do have some slides we can run through quickly at the 7 o'clock meeting, but otherwise it's really an administrative decision. This is essentially the same plan that you saw more than 63 days ago, just with the final frosting on it as far as implementation items. So there's a whole list at the end of the report of implementation items that the Planning Commission should take and then make sure those implementation items end up on actual site plans. In a nutshell, that's it. If you folks decide to approve tonight, then we would go into publication mode, put it out there for final notification per the state law, and then it becomes part of your master plan. So we can get into more detail, but really that's it. It's something that you folks have been looking at for over a year, and we finally, through an iterative, I don't know why I can't talk tonight, through a step-by-step process, public process, we've come down to a final document.
1.5 minutes. Commissioner Glanville in particular, any questions?
No, I think I'm good. I actually participate in some of those citizen workshops, so I'm somewhat familiar with what's been discussed, and I looked over the packet, so.
Okay, good. Sorry, Commissioner Kent?
So this is basically just your land use. It's the connector, we'll say from Bristol to Walker, south of Panel, or 3 Mile east to West River. None of that would be, that's someplace else other than for master plan.
Yes, you've got, and it's a little bit confusing, but we've got the high-level master plan that we have a consultant helping us with that covers the entire city. And it's more general in nature, and it really will update your 1998 plan. And then the sub-plans we've been doing for quite a number of years now that are more neighborhood-level planning documents. So this particular sub-plan is really focused between Fruit Ridge and Peach Ridge, 4 Mile and the Expressway. Dan's got one coming your way here probably in a month or so that I believe just went through Planning Commission, and that is the panel area. And then once we get both of those in the books, then we're going to look at what we call the gateways area. We did this back in 2011, but we never formalized it, which is good because now we're going to expand that to include the connector between Richmond and 3 Mile and a whole bunch of capital improvements on 3 Mile. So we'll probably call that Subplan 6. And then last but not least is South Walker. And what you guys already talked about, which is interesting to me, is the relationship between public health, which really is water-based, the cost for running public water, and how do you equitably pay for that. So really it's the relationship between public water and density. So that will be Subplan 2. So we're, at the staff level, we're biting off these small parts of the city. At the end of the day, if we can get this overall master plan to get done, then all of your subplans will cover about 80 to 85% of the city. So you'll have the whole city covered, and then you'll have the whole city covered in more detail. And it never ends, but at least that way you'll have some pretty good and current neighborhood level planning.
We are at 7:01. Any other questions before we jump into that? All right. Well, we'll go ahead and call the regular commission meeting to order. I'd like to ask Commissioner DeShane to do the invocation, please.
Certainly. Shall we pray? Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight asking for your guidance and your wisdom as we begin our meeting. Please help us to make the best choices for the betterment of our city and our community. Please continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the greater glory of you and for the service of the city and its people. Please watch over those who are hurting and be with our military, police, and fire and keep them safe from harm. We ask these things in your great name. Amen.
Amen. I'd like you to please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, if you could, please call the roll.
Mayor Carey,
Present.
Commissioner Kent,
Present.
Commissioner Gilbert,
Present.
Commissioner DeShane,
Present.
Commissioner Glanville,
Present.
Commissioner Helwin,
Present.
and Commissioner Gruters.
Present.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next on the list, we'll look for approval of the February 11th commission meeting minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Motion from Commissioner DeShane.
I'll support.
Support from Commissioner Gruters. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you. Now we'll open up the public comment for anything on the agenda this evening. Brandon's good. So, all right. We'll move forward from that then. On the consent agenda, we have 3 items. We have the expenditures, which we just discussed at the Committee of Whole, so it appears that we are good there. We discussed the finance agreement for the Maynard Watermain. Any other questions or dialogue around this?
That's phase 2 and 3 together. How's that going to affect the budget? And I guess, so maybe I'm a day late now. Day late and dollar short again, but would you run that through 2 budgets or just the one?
That's a good Darryl
Could you
question.
bid it late and run it through the 2?
It won't affect our budget at all at the city, because that's all financed through Grand Rapids and the ratepayers, so it does not touch our budget at all.
So the aggregate amount is not, that's
Nope.
what's being
That's all
financed.
factored into the rates over a 30-year, whatever the bond is that they sell.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions on the Maynard? And then last but not least, any questions on the MIDC explanation that Darryl just provided us then? All good. All right, so consent agenda, 3 items. Look for a motion for approval.
I'll make that motion.
Motion for Commissioner Holland,
Support.
support for Commissioner Kent. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. Next on the agenda is Resolution 19-509, and Frank, we just ended up on this, so if you want to pick up where we left off there, and we'll move forward.
Okay, thank you. If you can, bear with me for a few seconds here, and I'll go through a couple of slides. If you have any questions, please feel free to just shout them out, because I want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with what we're talking about here. Remember, just a little bit of to go back to what we were talking about previously, the Walker 2040 Master Plan is the overall document that will be comparable to the 98 plan. So our goal is to use the 98 plan as the benchmark and then update it with the 2040 plan. That's what a consultant is helping us out with. What we're talking about tonight is just Subplan 1A, and we'll explain that here in a second. So tonight, as we previously discussed, this is final approval. It's been multiple steps of approval and review here over the past year. We already talked about the no comment period. Planning Commission gave you a final Planning Commission public hearing on the 6th and recommended approval to the City Commission. And you folks via resolution will consider the final approval, publication, and distribution. Alrighty, I have no idea why the screen is split like this, but we're not going to mess with a good thing because you don't try to troubleshoot technology on the fly, right?
It's working.
If it's working, we're moving. Okay. So for the benefit of the group here, if we look back, the original Subplan 1A study area was really the northwest corner of the city. So it went from the county line to Walker Avenue, 4 Mile to 96. Over time, we refined that down, and we did that by looking at future land use plan as designated in 1998. So you can see kind of the mixture of uses, and this is not unusual for Walker, where you have all this mixture of residential, industrial, all coming together. But take a look at that area that's west of Fruit Ridge. It's rural residential, and it's very difficult to get water or sewer to that area, if not impossible. So Mr. Visser's plat that went in recently in this area, if you can see the cursor on there, large lot, public well and septic sites.
Isn't that pretty much west of that pretty wet?
Yeah, there's a creek channel that comes through there. I believe it's the Sand Creek channel, or a fork of Sand Creek. So there's quite a bit of environmental limitations in here too. And then you can look at the parcel fabric. But essentially from Fruit Ridge west, once you get past Irwin Seating, it's a no utility area. So that was one of the things that we looked at. And then we took a look at zoning as well. Double A is agricultural in Walker, which really is not a farming district. It's a rural residential district. Farming is certainly allowed, and that's allowed under Right to Farm Act as well. But the residential uses that you see in this part of town are currently zoned agricultural, which talks about a minimum lot size and frontage requirements, et cetera. But then you have this big block of gray, which is industrial in the middle there. So based on what we looked at, the Planning Commission, City Commission, and members of the public decided that the focus area for this subplan should really come down to Fruit Ridge to Peach Ridge, 4 Mile to 96. And we included this image in there because it's one of those greenfield development sites. Look at all that open space. And just as importantly, open space that will have utilities available and where there is a precisely platted public street to make Northridge connect from east and west. So it's very similar to the Walkerview development, where you have established residential along 4 Mile and down the avenues north and south, particularly Peach Ridge in this standpoint. But then you've got this big piece of property in the middle, and it's a public interest item to make Northridge connect. For the time that I've been here, we've been precisely platting that street to serve as an alternative route between 4 Mile and the expressway, to take some heat off of 4 Mile, to take some heat off of our avenues, so that all of this growth will have a way to move between the interchanges without having to go on 4 Mile Road, an internal service road that serves as a collector. And then the red circles on there are the main intersections that we're going to study. So you may recall that the Planning Commission and you folks as well looked at 3 versions of a future land use plan. And the selected model was the one that's kind of jumping out at you there with the red boundary on there. And so there were some transportation things identified on there, and then also a land use plan. What we try to do when we do land use is when you're looking at a big land area, call for future zoning to be planned unit development, because that way you can put the pieces together and it's not as rigid as standard zoning, and it's really made to do larger scale planning, which is where really the pieces come together better. The only thing I'll call, Mr. Ken, I see you turned your red button on. So you want to jump in now, or?
Well, don't you on a PUD also have more control?
You do. Well, provided that the planning commission exhibits that control. I think there's a general comment that planned unit developments essentially tear down the zoning ordinance, and if you let them, that's the case. There's quite a bit of flexibility. But really, there should be a trade between something that the city gets and then something the developer gets, like a reduced side setback or more signage, reasonable signage. So it's certainly not a free-for-all district by any means, and our code has quite a bit of detail in there.
Yeah, and to that point, I think that the way that we've used the plan unit development is to have a better hand in the way that they structure the overall development, and then we've kind of traded that with more flexibility on the individual sites. Mm-hmm. So we've gotten the benefit of overall sort of seeing, this is kind of how we want the road to be structured, and this is how we want the drainage and things like that to lay out for the larger overall area. And in exchange for that benefit, we've given a lot more flexibility to the individual units, providing that they're not overly burdensome to the rest of the development.
Correct.
That they can do more things on their sites.
That is a good summary of how you apply it. So what we did was staff's direction was to go with this high intensity for just a label, but that future land use plan and build the plan around it. Just as a reference, in 2008, we used what's called a precise plat to show this connection as an essential public connection to make Northridge a complete street between the two current dead ends. So where does that come into play? Well, it's going to come into play in your site plan review and also in this master plan. So as part of this planning process, and let's be completely honest, there's a developer interested in a lot of the vacant space that we looked at on the previous slide, and there is a desire to develop a certain amount of that property, a big chunk of it that they've come under option or either own now. So now it's time to take that precise plat and make it happen. So there was this past fall, Planning Commission and this body decided to amend the precise plat for Northridge. And now we're at the level of looking at construction drawings and trying to get through the issue with Consumers Energy, because these triple lines in the middle here are transmission lines. And there are certain standards for crossing those lines that we're working with. That's kind of an aside. We're working with consumers on there now. So what it comes back down to is, if you look at the master plan, here's the future land use plan that we developed over the past year. It's identified in your report as figure 37. You can see the various colors and identification for future land uses on there, which will be a guide to this body and the Planning Commission as rezonings come in. You've already seen a big rezoning right here, and just like we did with Walker View, as long as that was consistent with the plan as it was developing, then that rezoning would be approved, so that's moving forward. And then we also worked with the folks on Peach Ridge and on 4 Mile to make sure that the density would be limited to 1 to 2 units an acre. And typically, LDR, I think in the 98 plan, allowed up to 4 units per acre. But because this really is a rural residential area, one of the things that the public process brought out was it's low density residential, but it should be limited to 1 to 2 units per acre. And the reason that came up is there's quite a few backlots out here. You can see in the parcel fabric. So if someone wanted to come in on this property and develop it, I think there was concern that, if multifamily would come in there or something like that, that may not be conducive to the neighborhood. So that's why the plan shows 1 to 2 units per acre. That is just what we call the future land use plan. Then there's a bunch of text behind that, and I know this gets a little bit boring and wordy. We're required by state law, whenever you show a label in your master plan, it has to relate to an actual zoning ordinance. So what we do is to meet the state law, which I also think is good practice, is wherever we have a label, we show the districts in Walker. And then there's also all this descriptive stuff for the Planning Commission and the City Commission to plug in as these individual site plans come in, and that goes along with your implementation steps. Supportive findings is something that we should always do. It's good practice for anything that we do really in local government is, just explain why we're doing things. And in this case, we put it into the triple bottom line breakdown, economic, social, and environmental, to show why things are being planned in a certain way. And then here's all the stuff that you folks will be plugging in, and there's even more of it in the report if you want to get into that. But other than that, we're down to consideration of Resolution 19509 for tonight. That's a cover shot of the report that everybody has access to via the internet site on iCompass. And if you have questions, I'll do what I can to answer them.
All right, commissioners, questions, comments?
Good explanation.
Yeah, very.
All right, so then at this point, do we have what we need then to move forward on a resolution approving the adoption of the Resolution 19-509, but it's for the Subplan 1A Master Plan?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Commissioner Gilbert? So we have a motion from Commissioner Gilbert, support from Commissioner Kent. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you. One of the things I had made a note, when I want to commend staff, when you think back to 2005, having the foresight to actually, recognize we have different characteristics and uniquenesses with neighborhoods, and having that foresight to start recognizing that and make adjustments. I mean, there's the bigger plan, but then there's the sub-plans within there. So I think that's really important for us as it relates to the planning and zoning processes, that we're always having that in consideration, because you could just say the Alpine corridor, and it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's those sub-corridor that the sub-plans are what really is important there. So hats off to staff for that. That was 14 years ago. So, all right. So beyond that, the next thing that we have our audience anxiously awaiting for is a second reading of our ordinance of 19-510, and this is a rezoning to RPUD-2. Any comments or questions on this? Dan?
Well, I had a guy that would always call me and complain and say, why don't you come over and sit in my living room and look at what I got to look at? So, I hope that, I realize that, these homes that had been there 4 Mile, that, that's been there a long time, that, there's something there, plantings or trees or something, shrubs, whatever. I hope it looks nice for their sake anyways. So that's my main concern. I think it's really high density is correct. That's going to be what it, so other than that, I'll be quiet.
Good dialogue. Commissioner Gilbert, you were in the Planning Commission meetings, and my quick observation before I ask for your insight, one thing that I did notice was a willingness on developer. I mean, there is definitely, it's a different use there than what now exists there, but I think that there's been a lot of working with and accommodated with city staff to try and hear the residents and so forth. So I think Commissioner Kent brings up a really good point. We have to empathize and sitting in somebody else's shoes. So any thoughts from the Planning Commission?
Yeah, no, I would say that we definitely agree with what Commissioner Kent is saying, in that we want to make sure that this development is not overly burdensome to the neighbors nearby. The developer has shown a lot of willingness to work with us on finding ways to limit the impact. They've already shown, in the first, between the first and second review at the Planning Commission, there were a lot of changes made to help accommodate some of the concerns that neighbors had when they came to that original meeting, and I think it shows in the fact that they were not then here for our City Commission meeting. I think that we've done a lot of work, and there will be a lot more work done when they come back. I believe they do come back, right, in this process to the planning commission for the final area site plan. So we'll continue to work towards less and less impact on the neighbors. But this, again, is what we're master planned for. I think this is trending in the direction that we want to go with some of these properties that are on, on 4 Mile between that commercial district on Alpine Avenue and what we're doing to the southwest of this property in the future with that connection from Northridge up to Cordis.
Good. Well said. Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, just to second that, I was really impressed with the report we had from the developers in the last meeting. It really does feel like they are listening to the concerns of the citizens. And I was curious if has there been any other comment from the citizen group, or I didn't know of any.
I've heard nothing. I don't think staff's usually great about letting us know, but I've heard nothing.
Okay.
Brandon, I'll ask you, you're in the audit, any feedback that you've heard?
I have not had any.
Okay, good,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay,
I'll take on to Carol's comment. I thought that it was nice to have a follow-up after the meeting, a nice conversation with the developers, just to kind of reiterate that they were going to stay open to any of the residents' suggestions and make sure that they were proactive rather than reactive, and making sure that the residents that were affected knew what was going on. So thank you for that.
all right. In lieu of anything else, I'll be happy to entertain a motion for the second reading approving the rezoning for 19-510 to RPUD, high-density residential planned unit development. Do I have a motion?
I'll make motion.
Motion for Commissioner Gilbert,
I'll support it.
support from Commissioner Howland. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Any other public comment? Brandon, you sure? One last chance?
Before you
Okay.
leave,
Take care. All right. We'll move on then to Commissioner City Manager comments. Sarah, we can start with you down on your end. Work our way this way tonight.
Nothing from the clerk's office, thanks.
Okay.
So we're being a little more into the comments this time, I think, right? And the first one, being the liaison to the Planning Commission, I will comment on the community visioning workshop that many of us attended. I love those exercises, right? Like, I have a lot of fun at those. I think it's fun to sort of look at the broader picture, and, we're continuing the master planning process, so it'll be interesting to see what changes moving forward and how we can continue to build on the things that we've done and transition that knowledge into the process moving forward. Other notes from Planning Commission, we had a meeting last week, Wednesday. The Richmond Farms proposal did get movement, so that'll be back here, I believe, again. 22 lots approved. The residents, we had a fair number attend, and they were all set on it. They felt very comfortable with what we were doing. We did add the precise platting of the connection from 3 Mile to Richmond, which is really important for us with the traffic flows over there and the long-term vision for what we're looking at. The other things that we covered in that meeting were the Subplan number 5 future land use plan, which will also come here. That one, you can really see the fingerprints of the Planning Commission on. We did a lot of work refining that. That was the Pano and Clute Street area. So a lot of discussion and conversations and hard work between everyone involved, especially with the local stakeholders in that area, because they were very active in the process. The only other thing that we did was Falk North America, another one of those lots in the Walkerview development. That's the Dutch company. And they made some changes, but I think that they're ready and we're moving them forward. So that's all I have to report.
Good. Thank you much. Commissioner Glanville?
I also attended the community visioning meeting, and I would agree that, yeah, that's probably the fun part of the job. I really enjoy just that big dreaming and getting to hear from multiple voices in the community of what their hopes and dreams are and their expectations, and I think there was a lot of really good conversation that went on, so that was a great exercise. And then this past weekend, I was at the Michigan Municipal League Weekender Elected Officials Academy. And so my sessions were kind of the basics, and it was fantastic, of course. I learned a lot of great things related to finance and leadership, just connecting with a number of communities across the state. We even had representatives there from the UP, so that was fun. And I made some direct connections with the Kentwood Commission and Muscogee Heights Commission, who are also in my group.
That's great.
Looking forward to CapCon.
All right, good, thank you.
You will learn that you will have a lot of fun on this commission, not just with that exercise.
All right, Commissioner Gruters?
I also attended the visioning exercise. I was pretty pleased at the turnout. I thought we had a really good group, and the table that I sat with, I thought everyone was really interactive, some more than others, but I really appreciated the chance to talk to a number of people and meet residents and just to get different perspectives, and I thought it was very worthwhile. So enjoyed it and looking forward to continuing to hear more about how that evolves.
Perfect, good, thank you. Commissioner Howell?
I also attended the Advanced Weekender. My classes were much different. They were for an advanced commissioner, someone who's been doing it for a little while, or at least more than a year. Very good classes. We had one in racial equity and how biases are ingrained in us, and we have to be very careful in how we use them, of course. There was also a general civil rights presentation that was excellent. There was also a presentation on social media comparing what they were telling us to what we are doing here in Walker. We're doing an excellent job. Couple things that they talked about adding to this would either be getting more involved in Instagram and Flickr. So that was another thing. And the other that we talked about is the state of the city. Now, I know Rosalind in Grand Rapids is holding hers tonight, but I thought it might be something that we could entertain here at Walker and make it an event, like with community relations for that banquet, and invite all of our citizens in. Just thinking out loud, I'm sure that we could all come up with something, but I think it would be a great thing for us to do. And it was horrible driving home in the rain. Other than that, it was fine.
Great, thank you. Good comments. Glad to hear that was a good weekend for both of you, so. Commissioner DeShane?
Yeah, I attended the visioning exercise as well, and that was a lot of fun. It was really fun to interact with all of the residents, and I had some really energetic people in our group, and they came up with all different kinds of ideas, very forward-thinking, and some not so much, but it was just great to have a healthy conversation with everybody. And I know that I think the other commissioners that attended had a lot of fun too. And I know that this is one of Commissioner Gilbert's favorite things to do. He's always got a highlighter in his hand during this activity. I also attended the Planning Commission last Wednesday, and there was a lot of healthy conversation that took place in regards to Richmond Farms. And I think the more that residents are learning about this development and knowing that we're hearing their voices, that it seems to be being more well received. And it's just really a good interactive discussion to have. And then I also attended today the Personnel Committee as an alternate. And I thought that that was a lot of good, healthy conversation that took place. And I just think that the staff and everybody just really contributes in such a great way. And other than that, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Commissioner Kent?
I didn't attend any of these meetings you're talking about. But I'll tell you, I really, the last couple of weeks in our DPW, they've been getting a mixed bag of goods, but they've been doing a great job. And when you look around the outskirts of the city, we see they're doing an excellent job. And, the phone's not, I don't believe the phone's ringing for any of us that on negatives on that line. So but other than that, we're good.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
And in fairness, you've been off a little bit the last couple of weeks, so it's all good. So, good. Frank?
Okay, how about two quick updates? Your Mineral Mining Review Board reviewed 6 mines this year, same 6. And Mr. Kent was there when we finally got to close the Mines Golf Course mine on Koval. That was started in 2005, was supposed to be a short-term thing. And, we finally got to the point where I think we were as explicit as we possibly could that no more sand would be extracted from that site. The rest of this year and early next year will be restoration on that site. So you will see cut and fill. We're going to do a 6-month review on most of these mines to get out in the field, because technically it's February to February for permit to permit. But with the way these mines are going, I think we all agreed that 6-month reviews in the field would be good, especially on this Mines Golf Course one, to make sure they're doing what they agreed to for restoration. So, and the other thing, the mayor joined us today to meet with Blaine's Farm and Fleet. They're potentially proposing a building in Meyer, south of Meyer and Standale. So we'll see what happens there. Nothing set yet, but that's one of those areas where you may see another precise plat suggested. Ferndale to the Meyer gas station light on M11, because one way or the other, we need to make that a public street to bypass that intersection, whether it's this project or another project. So don't be surprised if you see another precise plat come up in that part of town.
What was the name of that company?
Blaine's Farm and Fleet. I don't think there's anything official on that yet, but it was something where they wanted to come in and just meet, and it's something we try and explain the process and the issues. So now we'll see if it becomes a project or not.
Thank you.
And that is enough.
Daryl?
Yep, couple things. One thing related to the master plan, subplan that you adopted tonight, just to follow up on that. This week we will be submitting with MDOT another grant application for the replacement of the Fruit Ridge Bridge, the infra grant, the federal grant. So Gary and I drafted a letter of support today, and I know the Right Place has been working on that with MDOT, and I think HNTB is getting some of the drawings together. So I believe that's going in this week sometime. So who knows? Hopefully we'll be successful with that. Kind of dovetails right into what we talked about with the master plan. And then what Commissioner Kent talked about, a little update on the DPWs. Obviously, they're just still catching their breath from the last couple of weeks and picking up the brush. And then when we had the prediction for last weekend's wind and storm, they kind of, checked everything and prepped everything as best they could. And luckily, we escaped without a whole lot of damage over the weekend. A few down limbs here and there, but no lane closures, no trees over roads, big ones. I think the last storm took out most of the loose stuff, fortunately. So we still have about another week or so of cleanup that we're doing along the roadsides, but we're going to be phasing that out too. I think we've got most of the stuff that fell from the storm, and now we're, I think, seeing things from people's backyards that they're dragging out front. So we will promote that on our social media sites of when the end date is at, but we're probably looking at another week or so for that cleanup, and that was from obviously 2 storms ago. But again, staff was well prepared this weekend and ready in the event that we lost power. We checked the generators in advance, everything was working, but luckily we didn't have to deal with that. We had one flickering over at the public safety building, but that was about it. So we escaped that one, which was nice. Just a reminder, we have finance meeting this Friday at 8 o'clock for those on finance committee. It's really just going through the first preliminary draft and some ideas of the budget, just so we can get this thing and get it moving. So that'll be the first meeting. So shouldn't be more than hopefully an hour, hour and a half. And then Monday, obviously, we have our strategic planning session here at 4 o'clock. That is all I have.
All right. Good, if you'll bear with me, I've got a few on here. I've been wearing the carpet out in between Daryl and Frank's office with a little downtime lately. And quite frankly, I've enjoyed it, and I'll say this with both of them in front of this commission. I shared with the CEO from Blaine's this afternoon. I actually had walked her down to my office, and we had a little chat about culture and so forth, and how the city approaches things. And I said I could not be prouder of the city leadership that we have. We really do have our act together, and it's becoming more apparent the time I've been spending up here this week and how forward thinking we are in a lot of things. So thank you, Daryl and Frank. But and on that, building on that, we've been splitting some time up on different events the last week. I know Daryl and I, he was at one, I was at another for the Right Place, the Investors Breakfast. I think the visibility with those, having that high visibility with our strategic partners is very important. I was at the Chamber of Commerce legislative breakfast this morning for the Grand Rapids Chamber. Our new representative continues to represent us very well. Our current state senator is also doing a great job, and they're tireless advocates for Walker. And I think it's important to know that. I mean, it's not one person. Part of the reason why we do all this is to let us know, each other know, hey, we're all, not only we're engaged, but we're actively invested in helping make the city better here. To your point about the state of the city, when you see the newsletter, which we submitted them last week, I think, sometimes read as much as what I don't say as what I do say. There will be a state of the city next year, and I'm all ears about a community relations thing. In there, I do give a little bit of a written state of the city, and I acknowledge in there, while we currently do not do a state of the city. So again, reading what I didn't put in there. So that look for that coming down the road. Blaine's is that is a company that we want to have in Walker. So looking forward to future growth. Family-owned business. She is a second-generation owner of the company. They just, the way that they do business, I would say is very similar to Meyer. Family-owned culture, and they want to work with companies or with the municipalities that they're actually in. So that was really fun to be a part of. Tomorrow at 4:30, I believe I'd forward an email out at one point. Anybody that's able to make it, there's a ribbon cutting for the My Community Dental Centers on 3 Mile. If you don't have it or want me to resend, just let me know after the meeting or now. But basically, ribbon cutting, and they are a different type of dental center in that they do a lot of work for Medicaid type of patients and lower income. Something definitely that I'm excited to see another option for our residents in the community. So that ribbon cutting's at 4:30 tomorrow. I'll be at the first part of it until about 5:30. Ice storm after action. A couple of you had asked me about this around maybe a little bit of an update, and look for more to come in the month of March and April here. April, I can't remember the date. We'll actually be doing a tabletop exercise in the commission chambers here with all of our public safety, the emergency management committee, and public safety will be going through a couple different scenarios with what an active shooter exercise looks like, maybe another ice storm, and maybe another one where a backup generator goes down, those types of things. So I could not be more impressed with the job that city staff did. We did have some challenges with some things that were unexpected. We learned some good lessons out of that. Captain Mankel actually attended a county debrief Friday morning. He stopped by this morning, shared an update, just so I had my arms around a little bit, and we really did a great job. I mean, we as a city staff, leadership, our managers, our department heads, could not be prouder of them. But there's definitely some things that, how do we work better with other entities in the county communication? I think more on them, not necessarily on us. And working through those as the months go on here. I did attend 2 rapid meetings and this last week. One was the 6-month evaluation for our new CEO. I continue, as has Representative Heisengett, to continue to advocate for more service to Walker. Look for more on that, but we gave him really strong reviews in his 6-month review. The finance piece, just as we've done here, we continue to pay down the long-term debt and the obligations there, and are very proud of the progress we've made. I won't recap the planning commission meetings. I end up sitting with Commissioner DeShane in the back of the room. But I do want to acknowledge the work staff did with the developer, and I want to give both of them credit. The collaboration between them, where we started and where we've come to, that's a wide chasm of progress there that I was very proud of how far that they've come. So everybody's working with one another. That's really how it's supposed to happen. Mark Konings, I'd be remiss if I skip this over, but 37 years, the cake and coffee last week went pretty good, and Mark held it together, didn't break down through the thing, but it's nice to see a lot of family, friends, a lot of former DPW came to pay their respect and so forth, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you for that 37 years. And then personnel tonight, I know I can sometimes be a little challenging and difficult to work with, but I really was impressed with, I heard some snickers there, but I do like, I want to give a couple groups, a couple departments credit. Sarah put together for the clerk's office. I like hearing that why do we need that extra position, that staffing, and really detailed piece that helped us make a good decision, good dialogue there. And then I think for DPW, the whiteboard exercise that Shannon had led with the group, and Frank and Daryl and Gary Postma helped give us arms around better. So I really do appreciate the work that's being done there. It helps us make better decisions and not just adding new bodies, but there's a why behind what they're going to do, what their roles are and everything. So healthy debate there. Last but not least will be the two, and I'll make sure the calendar invites go out for this. The Laker Line ribbon cutting will be June 3rd at 10:30, and I will be happy to send that invite. We do not know where yet. I am shamelessly advocating to hold it in Standale. So more to come there. So and then April 22nd is actually the tabletop exercise. We will start at 4 o'clock that day. There's never a great time sometimes to do these, but we are asking staff to stay later, so we'll run that right before our meeting, and we'll get that on the calendar and the agenda up on the website and everything here pretty quick. So outside of that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Support from Commissioner Kent, motion from Commissioner Holland, support from